Welcome back, everybody. We are continuing in our conquest and trying to understand the nature of all the months and their cosmic ability to influence us. And hopefully in that space, we get to know and understand a little bit more about ourselves and most importantly, the people around us. Because all too often we respond to the people around us in a way that is negative because we don't understand where they're coming from. But when you understand the nature of another person, it gives you the ability to appreciate and not be as reactive. We say, you'll see this a little later, we say, En mazal Yisrael. We spoke about this idea, the idea that the Jewish people are not bound by any particular mazal, that they are able to break out of the normal influences of the celestial bodies. Remember that your month doesn't define what you are, it just has an influence over what you are. So we're talking about the month of Tammuz. And when the month of Tammuz comes up, we know that the month of Tammuz is the beginning of one of the sadder months in the Jewish calendar. If you think back for a minute to the months that came before, right? We got up to Nissan, Iyar, and Sivan. Those are months of expansiveness. And if you think about it in terms of like just a chart, a growth chart, right? You'd see this slope going straight up, right? The Jews leaving Egypt, right? On the 15th of Nissan. And then, on the 14th of Nissan, doing their seder and then leaving the next morning. Okay? Then 49 days later, you're at the 6th of Sivan. You're standing there at Matan Torah and hearing God speak. Okay? And then you have another, 50 days, right? Where Moshe, or 49 days, where Moshe is supposed to go up 40 days, where he's supposed to go up and come back down with the tablets. And what happens? The Jews mess up, okay? Now what was supposed to happen was what Moses was supposed to come down with these stone tablets that were written by with God's fingers, so to speak, right? And now you'd have physical evidence. The world would have physical evidence of an infinite being interacting with humanity. You understand what we lost? We lost the proof. We lost the ability to say, look, this is divine. This is from God, from heaven to earth. No more doubt, no more safek. Moshe comes down, and we all know that on that tragic day, right, as we moved on, the Jewish people were involved in the Chet HaEgel and the beginning of the destruction of the tablets and the beginning destruction of so much of that awesome upward movement became a massive downward movement. And then from Tammuz until Tisha B'Av, you have a continuing furthering going down, 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 until the cycle gets rebooted again in the month of Elul, in the month of Tishrei, and so on and so forth. Okay, they all have different energies. But right now, today is, we're on Wednesday. That means Thursday night is Rosh Chodesh Adar, and it's important to note that the Chachamim asked the following question. We say, Mishanichnas Adar, Marbin Besimcha. Right, what does that mean? When the month of Adar comes in, you're supposed to increase your joy. So it doesn't say you're supposed to become happy. You're supposed to increase your level of happiness, which means that happiness is already there. You're just adding more to it. Now, that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of the month of Adar is that it's the month of Pisces. We spoke about this, right? It's the month of fish. And the fish don't have Ayin Hara. And they say, the Gemara says that if you have a court case, you want to take your court case in the month of Adar because there's something special and profound about this month that we're about to go into. And the rabbis actually debate as to when the energy of the month begins. Because we know that Rosh Chodesh Adar is 2 days. So one day is Lamed, right? Lamed Shvat, thank you. And the other is Rosh Chodesh Aleph Adar. So one opinion says it starts with Aleph Adar. And therefore, the actual power, the energy begins on the first of Rosh Chodesh. However, Ben Ish Chai says no. It doesn't start with the beginning of the first day of the month. It starts when we call out the months. Hachrazat HaShabbat, which means Lisp HaShabbat is when we call that Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh is going to have it this week. So already that energy is seeping into the world. The energy of Adar is the energy of happiness. What is happiness? Happiness is the ability to move quickly, don't feel any lag, being completely inspired, and being in a space where you could do exactly what you're meant to do. Happiness is knowing that you are doing exactly what your unique mission is on this world. That's what happens in the month of Adar. Then Hapachu, it switches around. The mazal changes very, very quickly. So the month that we're in right now is Adar, and we're very quickly moving into this power. We'll see miracles. I'm not sure if you saw this a couple of days ago in the news, where in the southern part of Syria, you had several 100,000 of the Druze community create their own militia and their own army, and they don't want to be protected by this new government that's there. They don't trust them right now because they were from ISIS before, and they think it's just a ruse, and they just want to rearm themselves. So they say, we're making our own army. Obviously we're still part of Syria, but we want to have our own army. And they yesterday made an official declaration where they are pro-Israel and the Israeli government, and they're supportive of Israel. They stand with Israel. It's like insane. Who would have thought that like a huge swath of the Syrian population would out of nowhere come out and say, like hundreds of thousands of people say, yeah, we stand in support of Israel. It's like crazy, out of nowhere, right? And Iran is falling apart right now. There's already like murmurings of like a civil war breaking out, murmurings of all kinds of things happening there. And the Middle East could become a very different playground very, very quickly. So it could happen in the month of Adar. I don't know what's going to happen. It's happening in the backdrop of everything that's happening today with the funerals for the Bibas family, which is so painful. And it's unfortunate, but we remember that we as Jews remember this more than anyone else. That's through the darkness and the uncertainty, the fog, that the light always begins to emerge. The light always comes out of the darkness. So their darkness, was somehow a merit for hopefully our light. Okay. The month of Tammuz. Let's look at the sheet number 1. Okay, we have Bnei Yisachar. And he says as follows. He says, the month of Tammuz is associated with the tribe of Reuven, whose attribute is sight. Reuven, right? That's the power. The combination of divine name associated with the He, Vav, He, Yod, according to the Ari, the name Amonai, when fully spelled out, Aleph, Lamed, Pe, Dalet, Lamed, Tav, Nun, Vav, Nun, Yud, Vav, Dalet, contains 12 letters, each of which corresponds to a particular month. Right? Aleph to Nissan, Lamed to Iyar, and so on and so forth. Following this, we see the 2 letters of Tammuz and Av, Dalet, and Lamed, Dal, when combined spell the word Dal, which means poor. This indicates that these 2 months are poverty-stricken, so to speak, for the Jewish people. And these are the months where we say, Mishanechnes Av, Mema'atim B'simcha. When the month of Av comes in, we reduce. You don't become depressed. We lower down our happiness. Now, these 2 letters, Gimel and Dalet for Tammuz and Av, right? We said this before. The Gimel is always Gomel, right? He's always looking for the opportunity to provide. Who is the Dalet? Dalet is Dal. Dal means poor. The Dalet is poor. Why is the Dalet depressed? Why is the Dalet poor, right? The Dalet is poor because if you look at the actual letter, the Dalet, how do you write a Dalet? It's 2 lines that intersect into a corner and they go nowhere. That's the Dalet. When you have no direction in life, that's where your depression comes from. When you don't have a clear understanding of what you're here for, you don't have meaning, you are lost. What letter comes after Dalet? He, right? What does He look like? He is the number 5. By the way, the number 5 in Hebrew is Chamisha, same letters as Simcha. Right? The word besimcha in happiness, gematria, 365. Because mitzvah tamid liyot besimcha. There's a mitzvah to be happy every single day. And now what's the question you should be asking me? Rabbi, how could you say I could, as a mitzvah, to be happy every single day? Aren't I not supposed to be happy on Tisha B'Av? Aren't I supposed to be unhappy in the day where someone dies and I'm sitting, Shiv'ah? How could you say that you're supposed to be happy every single day? We're misunderstanding happiness. Happiness is knowing that you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. I'm not talking about having fun. Don't misconstrue or misunderstand how we explain what happiness is. Happiness is not watching a movie or a Seinfeld episode and sitting there and laughing. Happiness is very different. Happiness is something that makes you feel expansive. The He is a Daled with a Yud at the corner. So you have the 2 intersecting lines. You have the little Yod on the bottom, and what's happening is the Yod is pulling you out of the corner. Expansionism. The He is expansive. So, for example, when you go and you're paying a Shiva call to someone, and they're sitting Shiva, The halacha is that you're supposed to walk into the room and you don't say a word to the person who's in yeshiva. Why? Because they're like the Dalit. When you come in and you wait there, you become the Yud, and you're expanding that person out of his place of depression and giving him this expansive feeling, and that brings him into the head. You are completing him, so to speak. Right? You're creating that expansive motion, movement is he, which is simcha. Where does simcha begin? Besimcha is the same otiyot as machshava, thoughts. That's the Maharal. That happiness is a choice. You think that your sadness is just a reaction to the way you feel. This is a mistake. You can choose to turn that frown upside down. That's up to you, right? You can choose to live a life of happiness. And by the way, I could help you figure it out if you're happy or sad. Ready? One example is like this: when you're praying, if you feel that the prayers of themselves are heavy, you're feeling lazy, you don't want to do it, you're probably on some level slightly depressed. Because a truly happy person is always on their tippy toes. They have energy. It's when you're depressed, you're slow, right? The energy is not there. And therefore, you're heavy. Everything is heavy and slow. As a matter of fact, we say that the month of Adar is an earth sign. Pisces is earth, right? And earth is slow. And therefore the tikkun for Adar is simcha. You're supposed to add that energy to like spice, you're supposed to bring yourself up. You got to choose to pull yourself out of that slowliness. Now, what's fascinating is that the month of Shvat, excuse me, is the month where the trees begin to reanimate themselves, right? They're pulling out the sap from the earth. The trees right now, in the next 2 weeks, my friends, are going to start seeing little buds of green on the trees. The world is beginning to re-emerge again. And in the same way that the world is getting ready for the spring and it's becoming alive again, we need to do the same thing for ourselves. It's too easy to feel like you're stuck in the darkness and the cold, dark winter. And in the same way the world is changing, you need to reanimate yourself, just like the trees did. And how do we do that in the month of Adar? How? By choosing to become bigger. I'm going to bring, Mishalach Manot to people that I'm not happy with. I'm going to give Matanot Levyanim. I'm going to give money and food to the poor people. I'm going to start preparing for the miracles of the month of Nissan by going out of the darkness of the winter, leaving the home, and going and engaging the world again by creating community and friendships and family. And when I have all those people together, and I've worked on the idea of Ben Adam Lachavero, the mitzvah of me and my fellow man, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, loving other people, I'm now preparing for this ultimate miracle, right? The precursor for Matan Torah and Shavuot was, and the Jewish people encamped together there. V'yichan sham, right? It doesn't say v'yachnu sham, and they encamped there. V'yichan is in the singular, not in the plural, because Rashi says, when they got to Har Sinai as a kehila, as a community, we were there k'ish echad b'lev echad, with one heart, one individual. Our intentions were all unified. And that unity was what brings the Shekhinah down to the world. And I say this, and I don't know, but you don't need to be a prophet to know that October 6th, the Jewish world was very divided in Israel. We were on the brink of civil war in Israel. People don't know this, but like in Israel, the politics were horrible October 6th. And while October 7th is a horrific, and it happened, it's over already, right? It's still going on actually. But it brought the people back together. And it's only when we as Jews are unified in that way can we overcome our enemies. It's only in that space that we have the zchut of bringing down more merit into the world. So the Zohar says in number 2, he says that the first 3 months, Nissan, Iyar, and Sivan, were given as an inheritance to the children of Yaakov. And the next 3 months, Tammuz, Av, and Elul, were the portion of Esav, not our months, right? And that's the declining months. Bnei Yissaschar says, after many battles, the month of Elul was successfully transferred to the lot of Yaakov. The winter months, Tevet, Shvat, Adar, fell into the lot of Esav. And as it was with Elul, so with Adar. The month that contains the Purim festival, it was turned over to the Jewish people. So Adar is a Venahapachu moment, right? Adar is the moment where the Jews of Persia recognized something profound. We said that the Jewish people were standing under the Har Sinai, And it says that God lifted Har Sinai over the Jewish people like a barrel over their head. Har Kigigit. He lifted Mount Sinai and said, if you don't accept the Torah, Sham Tiek Vuratam. If you don't accept the Torah, this is where you'll be buried. So now, when you're in a situation where someone's pointing the gun at you and says, hey, do this or else, do you have free will? What don't you get? The Midrash says, when the Jewish people were standing at Har Sinai, God lifted the mountain over the Jewish people and said, if you don't accept the Torah, I will kill you here. Right? Right? Har Kigigit. That's what the Midrash says, right? A mountain like a barrel over their heads. So there was no free will exercise at the receiving of the Torah, which is a weird kind of thing. And some people say that the reason why God did it is because he never wanted to reject the Jewish people, because I kind of coerced them into it, and this is his way of forcing us to have a relationship with him. But what happened was, after the first temple was destroyed, the Jews of Shushan, the Jews of the Persian Empire, over the 127 Medinot, where all the Jews were in, they had a day like October 7th. But imagine for a minute, the government writes into a law that says on the in Adar, the 7th of Adar, it's Kill a Jew Day, and everyone's allowed to kill every single Jew. The more Jews you kill, the more money you're going to get, the more taxes you're going to get, whatever it is. Yeah, it's like Hamas, and that's what Haman signed into law with Achashverosh. Now you're reading the news. You're like, oh, they just passed a new law, Kill a Jew Day. So the Jews are terrified. God rejected us. It wasn't that bad enough that he destroyed the temple and he exiled us. How embarrassing it that we're the Jewish people. We talk about being Am HaNivchar, the chosen people. We talk about being Or L'Goyim, Mamlechet Kohanim, and we're in exile. How embarrassing. And now there's Kill a Jew Day. That's it, God, it's over. They thought they were all going to die. You understand? You know the story at the end of it. Right? At the end of it, it was beautiful. It was amazing. But when you were living through it, it was terrifying. And these Jews, when they saw the month unfold, and how Esther ended up being in the right place, and how every single Jew was put in a position where they were going to go through horrific things, and that flipped around immediately, then Habachu, it changed. And it says the Kiblu v'Kiblu of Purim is when the Jewish people got up and they received. What did they receive for the first time on their own free will? The Torah. Right? So it changed. It flipped. This is the month of flipping. The month of Tammuz, though, is not that. The month of Tammuz is the opposite. The month of Tammuz is part of nature, which is why we say, by the way, the month of Tammuz and Av, if you have a court case, push it off. Statistically, those months are bad for Jewish people. You know that it's so bad that in New York City, you can't get a car during the 3 weeks. Even Goyim won't do cars. They know, like, it's the 3 weeks, we don't do cars. You're gonna get your car before the 3 weeks or after 3 weeks. We're not do cars. They tell you they're on vacation, that's not what's going on. No one wants to ship any cars during the 3 weeks because they don't want to deal with the bad mazalot of that time.
Also, cars made on Monday.
Yeah, that's also true. Well, even non-Jews. Yeah, because they're all part of one big industry. Okay, so number 4, Shebesh Shmuel and Bamidbar and Tammuz says as follows: the descent from above to below during the first 3 months is seen as the deliverance from Egypt bondage, Nissan, the raining of the manna from heaven, Iyar, and the Yom Torah and Sivan. Amazing miracles, Nissan, Iyar, and Sivan. After this period, we come to 3 summer months, when we are given the responsibility of raising even the most mundane aspects of the world to higher spiritual significance. This work began for the Jewish nation during Tammuz, with the sending of the spies by Moses on a 40-day mission, most of which occurred during Av, to investigate the land the Jews were about to enter. Their mission failed, and due to their false reports, they brought back the entry into the land was delayed, the door that was opened to the possibility of destruction of the Holy Two Temples, which occurred during these months. Everything happened in the month of Av, and because of the Jews who came back and slandered the land of Israel. That is all part and parcel of the month. Therefore, part of it is the avodah of speech. We say that the reason why the temple was destroyed because of sinat chinam, baseless hatred, right? It's very deeply connected to how we speak to one another. Do we give each other kavod? Are we in a place where we could, show you the proper honor? Am I humbling myself? Am I being arrogant? Am I offering you the ability to go ahead and lift you up, or am I pushing you down? The Zohar and Shlach says the deep ambition to remain princes of the desert kept them from approaching the opportunity of the land, which means that they didn't want to leave Eretz Yisrael. They would rather stay in Galut, in the desert, because they wanted to bask in God's glory and not have to deal with the real world. They blemished the realm of sight by reporting back to the Jewish people the depressing aspects of living in Canaan. Therefore, the month of Tammuz, when the Jews went out, is tethered to this power of sight. We talk about the idea of shmirat einayim, right? Talk about the idea of guarding what you see. And when I remember heard this idea, I'm like, come on, does it really matter if I look at something that's inappropriate? I know what my morals are. Like, how does looking at something do anything to me? And the answer is that it does. More than you could possibly imagine. And I'll prove it to you. I remember many years ago, there was a billboard in Times Square. It might be still there. I try not to go there anymore. There's like a 100-foot billboard of a woman wearing a bikini, right? And it was like, and it's just like, and I'm looking at this thing like, why is that there? It's ginormous. Now, I was younger, and I'm like, they're portraying the feminine body as an object. They just object. I realize she's an object because I'm looking at it like an object. And when you look at an object, you think about the things that you want and things that you don't want, right? Why aren't women upset about this? It's because when you see something over and over again, you're not even thinking about it anymore. You're so numb to it that you see this so often. It's the first time, the New York Times, I remember it was in 1993. Up until 1993, the New York Times, history of the New York Times, would not have any ads for women's, lingerie products. They wouldn't put it in there. And in 1993, they changed their policy because they needed the money and they put it in. What happens when you live in a society where now things are being projected? You become numb to it. You don't see it anymore. And it reminds me of another billboard that I saw many years ago. It was by Calvin Klein. They're the best. Calvin Klein had an ad. It was a boy lying on a couch with his head in some girl's lap, right? With another girl holding his legs and another girl on top of the couch, all three of them together. And they're only wearing jeans. Everyone's wearing jeans, right? And they're jeans and underwear. That's what they're wearing, right? And remember that the ad creates a subliminal message that says if you have my product, this is what you'll get, right? It's like when I was younger and I used to go to the car show in Jacob Javits Center in the 80s, and you went to see the Ferraris and Lamborghinis. There were always women there, models hired. Sometimes they're on top of the car, sometimes they're inside of the car, whatever it is. And I remember asking, like, why are they here? Like, do they come with the car? It's a power of association, right? Every Calvin Klein ad it's about to happen or already happened. It's all the same thing. Where am I? And therefore, what you see matters. And by the way, it's interesting that Reuven, by the way, is criticized for what? For seeing and looking at his father's bedroom, going into his the house, and taking up the mattresses. Power of sight, right? Broken. And therefore, part of the month of Tammuz is being able to hold back and protect what we see to resensitize ourselves to the world around us. I'm not saying you should be, living in some, as a hermit, tucked away from society. I'm not saying you shouldn't, engage in the world. I'll tell you what I tell my boys. I tell my boys the first look is always free. What you do afterwards, that's on you. Where you allow your eyes to wander, your imagination, that's all on you. But that first look, you can't control. I want you to engage in the world. I don't want you to sit as a hermit. To be a Jew means not being afraid to confront reality. Okay, but Midbar, it says V'yitzu dibat haaretz, and they spread an evil report about the land which they had scouted, telling the children of Israel, the land we passed through to explore, in the land that consumes its inhabitants, and all the people we saw, the men in it, are men of stature. Reigning who are the Jewish people? These 10 spies, 12 spies, are they really in a position to tell us what we're capable and not capable of doing? Tremendous amount of insecurity over here. Shem Shmuel says the sense of sight is at the root of the sin in the realm of the flesh. The eyes sees, so the heart lusts. Lust must be described as the heart of desire, and its feeling is commensurate with the heating of the blood. And therefore, when we're talking about the month of Tammuz, we're talking about passions. We're talking about passions untethered, right? It's okay to have passion, but all passions need to have boundaries. When you're working with people that are very passionate, you know what happens? They make a lot of mistakes. Because they're thinking so deeply about their passion, This is why I tell people working in the not-for-profit world is like a mixed bag. If you have someone who's doing it, that's super passionate about it, that's so amazing, but the challenge of working with someone who's passionate is the fact that they're passionate. They're not making logical choices all too often, and they make a lot of mistakes. But on the other hand, you have the ability to do all this good, so you have to weigh it out. So the month of Tammuz is all about the controlling of the other side. Daniel, he says that when then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with his wrath, and the features of his face changed against the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, he shouted and ordered the heat of the furnace 7 times, as much as it should be heated. Aramaic meaning for the word is Tammuz. Lamzeh, L'ba'amar lamzeh la'antuna, right? That is the word. Tammuz actually means heat. It's connected. The word Tammuz itself actually means passion, right? The thing that heats up the blood. This all, number 10, indicates that the period of Tammuz is noted at a time when the extreme aspects of the world have the most attraction. It is interesting to note that the crab, the cancer, is a favorite food of people who are given over to worldly pleasures and their desires. This is because it is rooted in the element of water, which flows as its desired. The ruling heavenly body of Cancer is the moon, which has a great effect on the waters of the earth. The negative aspect of Cancer in Hebrew, Sartan, is indicated in 3 letters, Samach Taf Nun, which spells out the word Satan itself. Now, we understand how the moon impacts the tides, right? The moon has its gravity, pushes against Earth, and because of that, we have the waves in the ocean, the waxing and waning of the waters. And just like the moon has an impact on the bodies of water on the Earth, it also has an impact on human beings as well. Because you, my friends, are made up of something like 70 to 90% of all water. Your brain is mostly made up of water, which is why so many people for so many generations have said that when there's a full moon, the wolf man comes out, right? That's why the word lunatic comes from the word luna, right? Which means moon, right? There's a deep correlation between the moon itself and our attitude and our feeling and our emotion. The Midrash says this heated nature may be transformed into spiritual beneficial energy through repentance. The transformation may be observed in the person Reuven, son of Yaakov, whose tribe corresponds to this month. Reuven was the first person in the world to return to God by repenting out of love for Him. It says that the greatest example of someone who does teshuvah is Reuven. From the time that he realized he did his sin, he did not stop repenting. He is the epitome, he epitomizes the idea of repentance. And since Tammuz is the month of Reuven, there's something profound about that month of doing teshuvah. Where does teshuvah begin? It begins with first being able to forgive yourself. And then it leads to you hopefully being able to forgive the people around you. And in that process of you being able to forgive yourself and you being able to forgive the people around you, it humbles you to want to reconnect to the source, which is God. The Zohar says the ultimate future, this month, which is the present, presently in the domain of Esav, will repent. Esav will repent. Some people are going to say that Donald Trump is the manifestation of, and I'm not saying this, I'm telling you what some people say, okay? That he is a manifestation of Esav, because he's the big guy, he's got the red hair, he's into the gashmiyut, and he's, whatever it is, he's somewhat charismatic, he's able to get what he wants, and so on and so forth. That the month of Esav, okay, this month of Tammuz, will see Esav doing teshuvah. And that some will say that Esav has to do teshuvah before Mashiach comes, and that what we're witnessing right now is Esav doing teshuvah, Esav finally waking up. The Esav's descendants, which I would argue today are the Christians, are recognizing that the Ishmael, his descendants, are a problem. And they've been living in La La Land up until now, and they're finally waking up and realizing that, oh my God, this is really a big problem. That they want Sharia law over the whole planet. Right? Their plan is to go ahead and throw you out of power. And when Esav wakes up, he's not a pleasant guy. He's very super destructive. You think Ishmael is bad? Ishmael's not bad. Esav is worse than Ishmael. Okay, the difference is that Ishmael is Pera Adam. He's the wild animal. He's not even thinking. It's all emotion. Esav is that, but he's methodical. He's strategic. He has intelligence. So when you apply a human intellect to your desire for destruction, it's way more profound than just Esav and then Ishmael running around and being barbaric. Right? It's like what the Nazis did. Right? Very few people on the planet can be as methodical as the Nazis were, keeping a log of all the people they killed and so on and so forth. Yeah.
But didn't Esav come together with his brother to marry his father? Like, didn't he?
And that's why we say he did, but his children did not.
I see.
Right? So the offspring, remember that Amalek, he was older already, but they were separate. So Esau was able to make peace because he came from the house of Yitzchak, and he knew that's what his father wanted because he was a boy who wanted to respect his father's wishes. But it wasn't necessarily out of his own personal desire, but because he went out of his way to be there, we say Ma'aseh avos iman labanim, that the actions of the father are true to the children, and therefore, Esav his children will come into teshuvah. And maybe that's what we're seeing right now. Maybe, right? I don't know. But there will be this pushback. And when Esau wakes up, he's more dangerous than you can possibly imagine, which is scary, right? Because on the one hand, like while we see what's happening right now in Israel, in Gaza, part of me feels like from a biblical place, I understand why genocide sometimes has to happen. When a society becomes super corrupt, you have no choice but to completely obliterate it. There's no rationalizing it anymore. There's no space where you can sit there and say, "Oh yeah, we'll make it work." You've heard the expression, "When you're kind to the cruel, you're cruel to the kind," right? That's what's happening right here. It makes no sense anymore. You have a group of people that have become a death cult, and they only want one thing and one thing alone. They're only interested in our destruction. How do you rationalize taking a 9-month-old baby and strangle it to death with your own hands, and then mutilating the body with rocks because you want to say that it died in an explosion? Sick. Yeah.
So are we next now to be more suspicious or more cautious about Christian alliances or Christian I don't know, as someone who grew up in the Midwest away from the large community, I've always been more, let's say, wary or cautious about
Yeah.
something like that. But, are we as a community supposed to, be suspicious of
Yeah.
Christian leadership?
Yes.
and
Not
obsession
all.
with
Just like not all Jews are equal, not all Christians are equal.
Yeah.
There are some amazing Christians out there who do amazing things, and they get it, and some don't. But yeah, you got to be suspicious. Whenever the world opens itself up to new possibilities, especially when it comes to hatred, when the hatred of Jews becomes a consistent reality with one group, you have to assume that it's going to spread like cancer to every other group. And therefore, you always have to be suspicious, irrespective of anyone's intention. That's what I would say as someone who studied history, someone who understands, who watched these things unfold. My nature says that history will repeat itself, right? And therefore, I have to assume that people, sometimes even their best intentions might not be their best intentions. They might have nefarious intentions at the end. And therefore, I'm always super concerned, and I'm concerned enough to the point where I say everyone should know how to protect themselves. Everyone should have, be more vigilant. We're living in crazy times. And even though we see things going good for ourselves, amazing. When the Jews were living in Shushan, they're invited to the king's palace. Amazing, let's go. Let's go to the palace. Let's go have fun. Let's party with the king. It was great. We were making money there. We were a part of the elite society. We were let in. We were accepted. It was a pluralistic society. Everyone's religion was cool. But in the background, what was happening is that God was literally writing the decree to wipe out every single Jew off the planet. And if it wasn't for the heroism of Mordechai and Esther, who knows where we would be today? So whenever there's something as horrible as October 7th happening, that means we're in a space of deen. We're in a place of judgment. And when judgment is open, it doesn't discriminate. It goes everywhere. So I still think we're in that phase. I want to say that it's going to change in the month of Adar. That we're switching out of it, right? That we're moving out of this a feminine energy of DEI and wokeism, which is all about inclusivity, and we're going back to a place of masculine energy, which is about defining truths and living in a world of principled, moral principles and honor and so on and so forth. That's what I'd like to think. Now, some sources will say that's not true, that for Mashiach to happen, you have to be in a feminine state. It has to be in the moon phase, not in the sun phase. So it's unclear if this is just like a moment where the pendulum's swinging one way, and then 4 years from now we're going to have another crazy guy who's even worse than Biden. Could happen. Doesn't necessarily mean that Vance comes in, or Trump has someone that is going to support his policies. You could have a guy in 4 years from now who comes in and spends 2 days undoing every single executive order, right? So whatever right now, we're in a space of growth, right? A space of opportunity, and that means you and I need to spend more time clarifying who we want to be. Because remember, the idea of mazal means there's influences, right? There's things tugging at you, pushing at you, like the moon. But you don't have to respond the way you feel. And therefore, part of the time that we're in right now is asking yourselves, well, how do you want to respond to the situation you're going to find yourselves in? It's like this, there was a podcast that I listened to recently with a guy named Andrei Kozlov. Andrei Kozlov was one of the hostages was released a couple of weeks ago. He's a Russian guy from St. Petersburg. He told us a story. If you want to listen, so I'd go to Meaningful People, and the interview is excellent. It's like 2 hours long, but it's gold. So much gold in that interview. So he says how 6 months before October 7th, he made Aliyah from St. Petersburg. Okay, he was on a birthright trip. Him and his friends they loved Israel. They want to come to America. I think St. Petersburg has something like 40,000 Jews. 95% assimilation rate in St. Petersburg. No one's marrying Jewish. And these guys are like the small sliver of Jews that are there to say, I want to come back to my people. He took Ulpan classes. He was there for 6 months and he needed a job. So he got a job as a security guard for a concert called the Nova Festival. That's his first job. And because he was he didn't officially get his passport and his training, they couldn't issue him a gun. So he was a big guy, he was there as a security without any real protection. And he tells think about every single step. Now, he said this, he's one of the most people at the Nova Festival send messages right away to the parents, I love you, if I never see you again, I'm sorry for everything, whatever it is. He never sent anything to his mother. He's like, I believed from the beginning, I'm gonna come out. I'm gonna survive this. He didn't know why, but he believed it. And he has a lot of fascinating things that he mentions, which I don't want to get into because I want to get back into this, but I want to leave this one idea that I think is worth mentioning here today. He said that one of the first things he had to learn was how to talk to God. They didn't know. They all learn how to talk to God, right? They all come out saying how they all have this deep feeling and this emotion, this connection that they know when they're speaking, God is listening. Who doesn't want that? All of us want that, right? But we're so distracted with life and I'll say the frivolities of life even, and it prevents us from really thinking about the things that are most important. He had to be in captivity for 488 days to walk away with a deeper appreciation for the things that matter the most in life. Do we want to be individuals who have free will, the observers of October 7th, from watching from so far away? Are we going to be like, God's going to say to us, well, why didn't you pray? Why didn't you connect? What are you going to say? I wasn't taken captive to Gaza. I had too much freedom. If I told you, I'm going to take away your free will, would you say, no, you can't take away my free will. I want my free will. Well, what are you using it for? Right? The month of Tammuz is a month which asks us, well, okay, well, you have this free will. Well, how are you refining yourself? How are you refining how you perceive the world? Lo toturu achrei levavchem va'achrei einechem. Do not go after your heart and your eyes. Why does it say your heart and your eyes? Shouldn't it say your eyes? Lo toturu achrei einechem ve'et levavchem. It doesn't say that. Pasuk says, Lo toturu achrei levavchem va'achrei einechem. Why? Because your heart colors the way you see your environment. First, how you feel determines what you perceive, right? And that's why the Pasuk writes it that way. First, clarify your heart. Who do you want to be at your core? Who are you? Who do you want to be? Andrei Kozlov to figure it out in Gaza? Don't wait to go to Gaza to figure it out. You're here to figure it out now. Okay. Where was number 13. The element of Tammuz is water. It shares the element of the month of Cheshvan, whose sign is Scorpio. The similarity between these two months, Tammuz and Cheshvan, is contained in the meaning of the Hebrew names of their signs. Sartan, Cancer, contains the word Satan. Akrab, Scorpio, contains Akar, uprooted, destroyed. And Bet, house. Water is also the source of desire, for just as water runs freely, so does desire. The ratification of the elements of water occurs during the third month, which is the element of which is this element, Adar, during Purim, which is why we drink, by the way. The tikkun for the month is drinking, right? Ad lo yada. We're supposed to drink until you do not know. What does the word yada mean? Yada. That's right. Knowledge, right? What does that mean? Until you don't know. What does that mean? Well, you're supposed to drink wine. You're supposed to drink yain, ad lo yada. Yeah. So why? What does that mean, ad lo yada? Until I do not know, I'm supposed to drink until I don't know. What does that even mean? So it's that's how we think about it. I think it's more than that. I think ad lo yada means until what?
So you're not thinking,
You're not in the headspace. It's just you don't have to think about it anymore. There's an inner knowledge already. You know what I'm saying? You're not thinking about it anymore. Ad lo yada means I don't have to rationalize anymore why I'm doing what I'm doing. There's a deeper knowledge coming from a deeper place.
Well, that's why when people drink, right? It's just to let go of that. If people are nervous, they need to drink. It's just to get into themselves more.
Correct. So we say that. We say Mishenichnas yain, yotze sod, right? When you drink the wine, the secrets come out, right? When you nichnas yain, all kinds of things reflect a person's true nature. We say when you're dating someone and you want to know who they are as an individual, say kise koso v'kaso. You want to look at their pocket, their drink, and their anger. These are the three ways of figuring out if this guy's a good guy for you or not, right? But the way he drinks is important because what comes out tells me a little bit about who he is. So yeah, it is about removing the edge a little bit, but it's not just about staying in an edgeless place. The idea of drinking is that it's supposed to create a transition which allows you to feel things that you can't feel because you're so distracted by being who you are. What do you want to say?
When the Mishpat is in Adar.
In Adar, correct.
Right. This is when you are having Purim.
Yeah, we're talking over here about the correlation between Adar and Tammuz. Tammuz and Cheshvan. Adar is a time where we're talking about this power of the water, the element of water, and so on and so forth. He's mentioning it at the end. Okay. All right. Let's turn the page. We're almost finished over here. We have 9 more minutes. I have to get to Midtown. All right. The heavenly body that influences Tammuz is the moon, whose influences are the tides of the water, indicates the basis for the meaning of the element of the month. Water. This connection may also be observed in the attribute of sight, which emerges from the eyes, whose element is water. From these connections emerges the spiritual focal point of the period of the year for deep influence and change. For the power of sight and the power of desire are both rooted in water, which is ruled by the moon, whose form is constantly changing. A greater susceptibility to sensitive impressions, which grows out of the impact of the sense of sight, was the chief cause of the sins and the spies of the golden calf. All connected over there to passions and so on and so forth. What's also interesting about water is that water is one of the few elements that can change on this planet. If the Earth were a half a mile closer to the sun, there would be no water on this planet. It would be gas, it would be vapor. If the Earth was a half a mile further away from the sun, there would be no water on this planet. It would all be ice. In order for water to be water, it has to be an environment of balance. We see that, we observe that. Hashem created a world that is not accidental. It's designed in a way where you're supposed to observe it, and that's supposed to help motivate you to think more deeply about the world that you live in. But when you have water and it's running freely, like your passions, okay, it's super destructive. When water is just running, rampaging through an area, it destroys everything. Yeah, I'm not sure if you've ever seen, you ever see those high pressured water thingies in the motor they use to clean the cars, whatever it is? You know that those things could cut stones. When water is pressurized, you could cut stone with it. My friend didn't know this. He was just the one he put his finger there, slice his finger with water. Right? When water is pressurized, okay, it can dissolve your bones. into water. That's how powerful water is. Okay, but like all things, if it is not, if there are no dams being built, if there are no, restraints put on, it'll destroy you. And therefore, the month of Tammuz is about putting on the brakes. It's not an accident, by the way, that it's in the summer months that we get into all this trouble. Your passions are running freely. I mean, we look back at our summer and we know, I know what you did last summer. It was another way of pointing at where all the mistakes you make are in the summertime. But in the summertime, you're being challenged in a way that's much greater than the wintertime because there's more potential for Kedusha, more light in the world, more holiness in the world. More holiness means more free will has to be challenged in the opposite direction. And therefore, more opportunities to do bad come up in the summer than they do in the winter.
But also, Rabbi, the water is so humble that it takes the shape of its vessel.
Correct, that's true. It also does that. Yes, it is humble. Okay, but that's not what we're talking about anyway. It's true, it does that. Yeah, water has its humility. It definitely has its humility that it takes the shape of its vessel. Because water has no form. Right? Gases also take the shape of their vessel. Anyway, let's go through the astrological sign of the month itself. Okay, so we're number 1 again. Okay, Judaism acknowledges that the mazal destiny, but free will is central. Okay, you have fire, which is passion, energy. You have earth, which is stability and practicality. You have air, which is intelligence and communication. You have water, which is emotion and intuition. Cancer is a water sign. It is deeply emotional, intuitive, and nurturing. A person's a month of birth is not their only factor. We spoke about upbringing, genetics, the hour of the birth, and influence in the character, and so on and so forth. Cancer's key personality traits, number 2. Loving and caring. Most cancers are naturally loving and caring, deeply compassionate and devoted. They can sense people's emotions very easily. They value security and stability. They have strong emotional intelligence. The challenges of a Cancer is that they are prone to be emotional, go at their swings up and down. They are very possessive. They cling to their loved ones. They're worry about the future, and they are often withdrawn when they find themselves, in a position where they're getting hurt. Cancer thrives in nurturing environments, but struggles with change and uncertainty. All right, these are some of their work and financial habits. They're hardworking, they're diligent, and they value financial security. They're excellent money managers, plan for the future, prefer stable jobs over high-risk ventures. They save money for a rainy day, often stockpile supplies or money out of fear. They're hoarders. Love and relationships, they're deeply loyal and romantic, and need constant reassurance. They're protective of loved ones, sometimes at the point of possessiveness. Prefers traditional family roles, but emotional security is more important than wealth. Loves deeply, but does not easily forgive betrayal. Parenting and family life. Loving, devoted, and protective parents. Can be overbearing. Sorry if you're a Cancer. Has trouble letting children grow independently. Treasures home life, prefers comfort and family over adventure because it's all emotion. Remember everybody's birthday and family events, deeply sentimentally attached. Ezu Gibor, Hakovesh et Yotzro. But so he's struggling, Cancer's struggling in that. He does not know how to be strong. He's allowing his or her emotions to go ahead and rule over them. Cancer's strengths and weaknesses in Jewish ethics. So they are compassionate, deeply caring for others. They are fiercely devoted to the family and friends. Generally calm, but depend on the mood. Willing to help, but waits to see if others will step in first. They are not going to be the ones like Nachshon to jump right in. This is the challenges. They needs to trust in God to provide security. They are suffering with mood swings and emotional lows. May compare themselves to others due to insecurities. Struggles to let go of their past or people. Okay, they have to learn to trust in Hashem. V'yiftach b'Hashem. The Cancer's children. They need gentle discipline. Responds best to kindness, not harshness. Seeks approval and attention. Parents should offer constant reassurance. Can be spoiled if given too much. Must learn balance between love and boundaries. That is the theme, the motif for Cancer. And it starts with the children. If you have a Cancer kid, they need rules. Must work on building confidence. This is for adults. And reducing fears. Trusting in Hashem. Should seek stable relationships and careers that provide emotional security. Needs to learn to forgive and not dwell on the past hurt. Okay, the greater the struggle of Fumtzar Agra, the greater the reward. Emotional battles are part of spiritual mission. Overcoming them leads to growth. Cancers need to be reminded of that. Final ideas, okay? The greatest strength says unmatched love. Okay, if you're Cancer, no one can love as well as you can. Devotion and deeply emotional understanding. The challenge is overcoming fear, mood swings, and attachment issues. Key points. Cancers love warmth and protection. Make them extraordinary family members and friends. When they learn to control their emotions and fears, they can achieve great happiness and stability. You got to trust in God, let go of past hurts, balance emotions with logic, and we say, like to everything, there's a time and a time for every purpose under the heavens. You keep doing what is good, and Cancers, you can be amazing, remarkable human beings and people. Thank you so much, everybody. B'ezrat Hashem, we'll continue the conversation next week as we walk into the month of Shavuot. Everybody, questions?